Hello and welcome to the fourth part of the Kafka letter. And the fourth part will also be the last one. It's not the end of the letter, but at one point, translating it, I decided not to go any further because he repeats himself, and it's just the same thing over again. So I have to admit I got a little bored then, and I said, well, okay, we know enough. After this last part, we know enough. We don't need to read the last few pages. We get the picture. Okay, in this part he talks quite a bit about his sisters, and yes, it has a nice ending too. Okay, so we'll have a drink on Franz Kafka, and on the fourth and last part of this little video series about the letter to the father. Prost. Okay, I will start reading. The sisters only partially went with me. The happiest in her stand with you was Vali. Being closest to the mother, she was also similar obedient to you, without much effort or damage. But you were also much friendlier in your acceptance of her, because of the reminding of the mother, even though there was little Kafkaish material in her. But maybe precisely this was just all right with you. Where there was nothing Kafkaish, even you could not demand anything of the kind. You also did not have the feeling, like with the rest of us, that something is lost here, that forcefully needed to be saved. You may have never exactly loved the Kafkaesque, as far as it showed in women anyway. Vali's relationship to you would have maybe become even more friendly if the rest of us had not disturbed it a little. Ellie is the only example for the almost complete success of a breakthrough out of your circle. From her I would have expected it the least during childhood. She was such a ponderous, tired, fearsome, morose, guilt-ridden, overly humble, nasty, lazy, piggishly greedy, miserly child. I could hardly look at her, not at all talk to her, so much she reminded me of myself. So much similar she stood under the spell of your influence. Her miserliness was especially revolting to me, since I probably had it even stronger. Miserliness is, after all, one of the most reliable symptoms of deep unhappiness. I was so insecure of all things that I only really owned what I already held in my hands or in my mouth, or what at least was on its way there, and she, who was in a similar situation, enjoyed taking precisely that away from me the most. But all of that changed when she went away from home at a young age. That is mostly important, the young age. Got married, had children. She became happy, carefree, courageous, generous, selfless, hopeful. It is almost unbelievable, actually, that you didn't even notice this difference, and anyways did not judge by its merit. That's how much you are blinded by the grudge you have always had against Ellie, and basically still unchanged have. Only that this grudge has become less urgent now, since Ellie does not live with us anymore. And beside that, your love for Felix, his grandson, and the affection to Karl, the father of the grandson, so his son-in-law, have made it more unimportant. Only Gertie still has to pay for it sometimes. Well, unfortunately, we don't know who Gertie is. I think I have to go blow my nose real quick. I have some kind of allergy tonight. I don't know. I feel like okay. I will go off camera real quick. I will blow my nose real quick. Okay. Something in the air tonight. I don't know. Okay. Where was I? Oh, Felix and Karl. And Gertie, who has to pay for it sometimes. Okay. The mysterious Gertie. Well, I probably could have researched for Gertie, but I didn't think it was too important. Okay, he goes on. I hardly dare to write about Otla. We remember Otla is his favorite sister and also very similar to him in her character. I know I risk the whole hoped-for effect of this letter with it. Under normal circumstances, when she would not get into any danger or emergency, you have only hate for her. So you admitted it to me yourself that, in your opinion, she would constantly trouble and hurt you on purpose. And while you suffer because of her, she is satisfied and happy. Yeah. Parents who blame their children for their own bad feelings. That's not good. This goes off. While you suffer because of her, she is satisfied and happy. A kind of devil, so to speak. What a terrible estrangement, even greater than between you and me, must have taken place between you and her. that such a terrible misconception is possible. She is so far from you that you hardly see her anymore. Instead, plays a ghost where you assume her to be. I admit that you had it especially hard with her. I do not see through this very complicated case fully, but there was, however, something like a kind of Löwy here. We remember Löwy is the maiden name of the mother. So her side of the family is the Löwy side. So something like a kind of Löwy equipped with the best Kafkaish weapons. The father is the Kafkaish. It wasn't a real fight between us. So, okay, now he's talking again about himself and the father and the fight between them two. I was soon done. What was left was escape, bitterness, sadness, inner struggle. You two, though, were in constant readiness to fight. Always fresh, always strong. A great as well as a discomforting sight. In the very beginning, you were surely very close to each other, because still today, from the four of us, Otla is probably the best portrayal of the union between you and Mother, and the powers that combined there. I don't know what took away the fortune of harmony between father and child from you. It only suggests me to think that the development was similar to mine. On your side, the tyranny of your nature. On her side, the löwische defiance, sensitivity, sense of justice, unrest, and all of that supported by the awareness of the Kafkasche strength. I did influence her too, but hardly out of my own initiative, but solely because of the fact of my existence. Besides, she was the last one to come into already fixed relations of power, because Otla was the youngest child, the last one, and could build her own judgment from the plenty laid out material. I can even imagine that for a while she was torn in her nature, if she should throw herself onto your chest or the enemy's. Obviously, you missed something back then and pushed her back. You would have, however, if it only had been possible, become a splendid pair of harmony. I would have lost an ally, but the sight of you both would have richly compensated me. Besides, through this unforeseeable fortune of finding full satisfaction in at least one child, you would have changed very much to my favor. All this, however, is only a dream today. Otla has no connection with the father, must find her way alone, like me, and for the more of confidence, self-assurance, health, carefreeness she has compared to me. In your eyes, she is nastier and more treacherous than me. I understand that. From your point of view, she cannot be any different. Yes, she is able to see herself with your eyes, to feel your pain and be not desperate, despair is my thing, but be very sad about it. Yet you do see us, seemingly in contradiction to this, often together. We whisper, laugh. Here and there you hear yourself mentioned. You have the impression of cheeky conspirators, weird conspirators. You are, however, a main subject of our conversations, as of our thoughts ever since. But we truly do not sit together in order to plan something against you, but to go through this terrible trial in all details, from all sides, at all occasions, from afar and near, that lies between us and you, together with all exertion, with fun, with seriousness, with love, defiance, scorn, reluctance, devotion, sense of guilt, with all forces of the head and the heart. This trial, in which you constantly claim to be the judge, while being, at least for the greatest part, embraces. Here I leave the door open to all mistakes that can come across me, of course. Okay, so you claim to be the judge while being a just as weak and blinded party as we. An instructive example in connection with the whole was Irma. Okay, now Irma. It's a story about Irma. So who was Irma? On one side, she was a stranger, was an adult when she came into your business. She mainly had to do with you as her boss, thus was only partly and already in a robust age exposed to your influence. On the other side, she was blood related. After all, admired you as the brother of her father, and you had much more than just the mere might of a boss over her. And despite that, she, who was so efficient in her weak body, so smart, industrious, modest, trustworthy, selfless, loyal, who loved you as an uncle and admired you as a boss, who proved herself in other positions before and after, was not a very good employee to you. She was, after all, and of course, okay, there's a German word here I forgot to translate, and I'm thinking, pushed into. She was, after all, and of course, pushed into by us, close to the children's stand towards you, and so great still was the bending might of your nature for her, so that she developed embraces only towards you, though, and hopefully without the deeper suffering of the child, so that she developed forgetfulness, carelessness, gallows humor, maybe even a little defiance, as far as she was even capable of that, whereas I do not even put into account the fact that she was sickly and also not very punctual, and a miserable domesticity laid heavily upon her. The abundance of your relationship to her you summarized in a, for us, almost classical, almost blasphemous, but especially proving of your innocence in your human treatment sentence, that God's soul left me a pigpen. Yeah, I could describe more circles of your influence and the fight against it. But here I would then come into uncertainty and had to construct, besides that, the further you move away from the business and the family, the more friendlier, accommodating, polite, considerate, sympathetic, I also mean outwardly, you always have become. Just as, for example, an emperor, once he is outside the borders of his own land, has no more reason to still be tyrannical, and can good willingly get involved even with the lowest people. This is funny. In fact, on group pictures from Franzensbad, remember Franzensbad was this place with, a little outside of Prague, where the family would go on the weekends. Where was I? Oh yeah, in fact, on group pictures from Franzensbad, you always stood so big and cheerful in between the little grumpy people, like a king on a visit. Oh, okay. I think this is really funny. You always stood so big and cheerful in between the little grumpy people. This could have indeed been favorable for the children, though they would have had to be able to discern this during childhood, what was impossible. And I, for example, should not have constantly lived more or less within the most inner, strictest, choking ring of your influence, as I actually did. So it took him a long time to see these things from a distance. Not only did I lose the sense of family because of it, like you say, on the contrary, more so, I did keep family sense. Mainly negative, however. For the, of course, never-ending inner separation from you. The relationships to the people outside of the family probably suffered even more under your influence, though. You surely are mistaken when you believe that I do everything for others out of love and loyalty, and nothing for you and the family out of coldness and betrayal. I repeat for the 10th time, either way, I probably would have become a human, shrinking, frightened man. But from there, it still is a long, dark way to where I really came to. Until here, I deliberately withheld relatively little in this letter. Now and later, though, I will have to withhold things that are still too hard for me to admit before you and me. I say this so you don't think, if the whole picture should become a little unclear here and there, the lack of evidence is to blame for it. There is plenty proof which could make the picture unbearable extreme. It is not easy to find a middle in it. Here it is enough, by the way, to remind of earlier things. I lost self-confidence before you, instead traded it with an endless sense of guilt. In memory of this endlessness, I once wrote about someone correctly. He fears the shame would even outlive him. And this is the end of the translation. And I just want to add something. You might remember, this video is not so long, so a few minutes ago, when I was reading this, he talked about, or he used the word the trial twice. So he called, pretty much his life or his relationship with the Father the trial, and he also called the Father to be the judge of this trial. And the last sentence, where he says that someone was afraid that the shame would even outlive him, that is Joseph K. And Joseph K. is the main character of his novel, The Trial. And you know, there's many Kafka experts out there, and they have been analyzing everything that he wrote. And with this trial, they have speculated, of course, speculated on what this trial is about. And some of these experts or a common idea of these experts, common conclusion, is that the trial is about God. But it's clearly not, because Kafka I mean, as you can clearly see now, Kafka died, the eternal Son. I mean, he could never free himself from this relationship to the Father. And there are, so he always stayed in this dependency to the Father until he died. So he never made it beyond the Son. He never made it into manhood. And there are different ways that this emotional dependency can show. So there's one example. So if it's a child that wants to be a good child, it will always ask itself, what would, well, in this instance, the Father, what would the Father want me to do? And then the child, the emotionally dependent child, would then do whatever this child thinks the Father would approve of. So to be a good child. So this is one way. And another way is to then act the opposite way. So that would be the rebellious child. And so this child would then ask the same question, what would Father want me to do? And then this child would do the opposite. So, just to show the Father, I don't know what the child wants to show. I think the child wants to show I'm independent, but it's really not independent, because if it does the opposite, I mean, it's not free in his actions, is he? It's not. So then this rebellious child would always act according to the rebellion. So you know what I mean, right? Yeah, you do. Yes, and in Kafka's, where am I? I wrote this all down. Hold on. Okay, so Kafka, he was intellectually superior to the Father, but he didn't have the mental or the emotional strength, and he also didn't have the stamina to act upon it. So instead, he suffered, became insecure, fearful, defiant, quiet, nasty, sarcastic, and restricted and punished himself inwardly and outwardly. And finally, Kafka became totally paralyzed, and only in writing he could live out his thoughts and feelings. That's why the writing was so important to him, because that was like, the writing was his refuge, and also, he would flee into it. And I said that Kafka became paralyzed. He really in a letter to Felice Bauer, the woman he was engaged to and supposed to be married to twice, and never worked out. And in a letter to Felice Bauer, he says, referring to his life on the canapé, a canapé is like a chaise lounge. You know what that is? It's kind of a, well, it's a mix between a little couch and a chair. It's like a lay-down chair. Yeah, canapé, chaise lounge. So okay, talking about him totally being paralyzed. So he says to Felice Bauer in this letter, referring to his life on the canapé, that getting up only serves the purpose of throwing himself back on it and further lay there in apathy. So I have lived many years, and when I try to look back more closely, an endless amount of days. Yeah, and when you read his diaries, yeah, many days he just lays there and yeah, basically his life really plays within his head. Yeah. And and when he had his first bloody cough in 1917, he wrote in his diary that finally the lungs had made a deal with the brain to work together and free him from his agony. So for him, the only way to be free of the Father was in death. And that's exactly how the trial ended. His novel, he dies at the end. He gets killed by some guys. I think they came out of the pub. Well, it's outside on the streets. Some guys come at him and they strip him of all his clothes. So he's totally naked, and then this one guy puts this knife into him and turns it. And this is something he also wrote in his diary. There's an entrance in his diary where he talks about where he kind of makes his inner feeling visible with this picture of someone turning a knife within him. And this is how he dies in his novel The Trial. So, if you ever come across a Kafka expert who wants to tell you that the trial is about God, you know better. It's not about God, it's about his Father, because he never made it beyond the Father. But that's necessary to get to God. But he never sat with the gods and never had that drink with the gods. So now you know. And that's the end of Franz Kafka and the Letter to the Father. Yes, I hope you enjoyed this little series. And And I thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.